Now, next question is about education. I mean education at the educational institutions and also at the corporation level about open source.
Right.
Obviously, they can teach how to use Linux, but I think there are many more topics from a school point of view in case of open source on Linux, and it would be appreciated if you could share about your thought of, so to speak, ideal training in open source domain.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big problem in the United States in terms of the fact that we need more developers who understand open source, who understand Linux, than are available. You know, the number one job of an educator is to prepare their students for the workforce, right? To prepare their students to go out and find successful careers and to be able to live a happy life. And in computer science departments, I think that educational institutions do a disservice to students if they don't provide them with the skills that are needed out there. And today, the skills that are needed are around Linux and around developing technology using open source software. Yeah, I mean, you look at any hot company in Silicon Valley right now, Facebook, Google, Salesforce.com, I mean, Twitter, you name it, they're dying for developers who know how to develop and use open source software. I mean, they directly recruit people from open source software projects. And so, you know, by training students to develop software in this way, you're really preparing them for the future of jobs. More importantly, you're providing industry with a workforce that is going to be able to innovate faster. Right? The number, when I travel all over the world for the Linux Foundation, and the number one request I get from the leaders of very large technology companies outside of the US is, can you teach us how to better leverage open source? Can you teach us how to become leaders in the open source community so that we can better use that software to benefit our company, whether that's in Korea or here in Japan or in China or in Russia. I get it all the time. And so I think it would be useful for educational institutions to provide this type of curriculum to their students. We've developed some of that curriculum at the Linux Foundation. We have begun working in partnership with some universities there. But boy, it continues to be a big challenge for the entire industry.
Now, do you think that the major U.S. universities, they have pretty good training programs for open source industry?
Well, I mean, some are better than others.
I see.
But, you know, I think the other thing is, you know, American students are kind of outpacing their professors sometimes. Let me give you an example. There was a famous set of quotes from one individual. He said, you know, code should win arguments. The best idea and implementation should always win. These were things that were written not by Linus Torvalds, but by Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. And what's interesting is that he said those things in a letter to his investors on the eve of the Facebook IPO. He wrote a letter to investors and he called it the hacker way. He wrote an entire letter explaining how Facebook uses open source development methods to create Facebook. And, you know, this is on the eve of the most anticipated IPO in the last decade in technology. This is when Mark Zuckerberg is about to become a multi-billionaire, and he decides to write a letter about the hacker way. And I thought that is so interesting because at Harvard, when Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook, he didn't, purchase a copy of Windows and buy an Oracle database and start creating, he grabbed Linux and MySQL and open source software and created the world's largest social network and billions of dollars of value. So, these students already get it, right? I think it's time for the curriculum to catch up with a lot of these students.
And he is also behind the how you call open hardware.
Correct.
Is that right? Correct name?
Yeah, so Open Compute Foundation.
Open Compute
and so
Foundation.
Facebook started an effort to essentially open source their data center. And the idea here is that they need a very minimal set of hardware components configured in a very specific way to enable the kind of hyperscale computing model that will help them deliver software as a service, software like Facebook and software like any kind of cloud computing instance. I think in the world of open compute, they see data center hardware as a very low margin essential commodity, that they put together in order to provide, higher value things like the Facebook and social networking and storage services and all the other things that you can get online. So yet again, you're seeing open source now being applied not just to software, but to hardware. I think 5 years ago I made this prediction that it's not just going to be free software; it will be free hardware as well. And what I meant by that is that the entire IT industry is moving to a service. In Silicon Valley, if you're a hot startup, you don't buy any software. Just like Mark Zuckerberg, you take open source software and you create your new website or your new service. But you don't buy any hardware either. You spin up virtual machines on Rackspace or Amazon's cloud, and you're good to go. So you're seeing this world where people don't buy hardware and they don't buy software either. So it's fascinating to watch.
Did you read a book which was written by Chris Anderson, Makers Movement?
Yep.
And in which he mentioned that the open source movement will come to actual hardware domain, manufacturing domain. And that's quite, insightful.
Right, and that exact thing is happening, and we see it in things like open compute and a wide variety of other open hardware movements that are out there.